Naira hadn't uttered a word in 17 years. Not since the night she watched her parents die, since she'd opened her mouth to scream, and nothing came out but terror. Her silence had begun, as shock then hardened into armor, away to fade into corners where people's eyes slid right past her. It was the safest place she knew. Hidden in the dim edge of the great hall, she scrubbed the cold stone floor with the practiced rhythm of someone who'd learned to move without being noticed. Above her, Draxon Vane's voice rolled through the empty space. Most of the servants had been sent away hours ago, but quiet little Naira was easy to overlook. She'd perfected becoming a shadow. Unseen meant unharmed. And tonight being unseen meant stumbling into something deadly. The festival Draxon was saying low but sharp enough to echo. 3 weeks. That's when we strike. Naira's hand paused mid-scrub, though she didn't lift her head. Keep moving. Don't react. Listen. 50 rogues will do the job. Another man answered, his tone rougher, meaner. Kaelin Frost never travels heavy to the Peace Festival. That trust is a weakness. Kaelin Frost, the listening king of the northern White Peaks. Naira had never been near his lands, but everyone whispered stories, how he could sense truth, even when people stayed silent, how he read emotion like it was ink on a page. They said his kingdom thrived because he heard even the quietest voices, because he cared. Everything Draxon Vane was not. Cor Draxon warned, "You're certain your rogues won't fail?" Corb. "Blade doesn't fail," came the brutal reply. "Your gold buys my sword's alpha, and my blades will bring the listening king down. And when chaos hits, your claim to his lands will look like salvation." A pause. No one argues with an alpha promising order. Ice slid through Naira's chest, an assassination planned during the Peace Festival. In 3 weeks. She had to warn someone, but who she couldn't speak, and she was just a servant. Even if she tried to write it, who would believe her? Draxon would deny it, and she'd vanish like others before her. And there was another danger, one she had buried. For 2 years, ever since Suna, her grandmother, and last family died, and left her alone in the Silverwood Pack. Naira was an Omega. Suna had taught her how to hide it, how to mask her scent with bitter herbs. If they find out, they'll force you into some political bond, Suna had whispered. Stay small, little dove. Stay unseen. So Naira had stayed quiet, stayed tucked in the background, and survived. But exposing this plot meant drawing eyes to herself. Too many eyes. Someone might discover her truth, what she was, and then she'd become a pawn in Draxon's schemes. No. She needed another way. She needed to warn Kaelin Frost without being noticed. That night, Naira sat in her cramped little room and pulled out her most treasured possession. A worn leather journal her mother Elin had given her. Every page was filled with drawings, plants, animals, places she'd wandered, people she'd watched from a distance. Drawing was her voice, her memory, her heart. Tonight it might save a king's life. She sketched quickly, planning. The northern White Peaks touched Silverwood's northern border. If she reached the edge of the territory, she could leave warnings where patrols from Frost's kingdom would find them. It was risky. If she was caught wandering outside the Packlands, if rogues spotted her, if any of Draxon's wolves realized she was gone. But staying silent meant a just king would die. And under Draxon's rule, countless others would fall too. Naira looked at her hands, small, pale, marked with old burns and cuts from years of labor. These hands had scrapped floors, chopped wood, served meals. These hands had filled a journal with everything she couldn't say aloud. These hands would draw warnings no one could ignore. Near midnight, when the pack house stilled, and the guards shifted their posts, Naira slipped out. She'd memorized every pattern in this place. Years of going unnoticed had taught her when the halls belonged to shadows. The trek to the border took 3 hours on foot through a winter-bitten forest under a moon barely visible. Her pulse thudded with every crack of a branch, every rustle, every hint of breath in the dark. But she'd been raised in these woods. Garrick, her father, had been a tracker before his death. She remembered how he taught her to move with the trees, to step where leaves didn't crunch, where snow didn't sink. At the border, ancient stones etched with territorial runes, Naira found a clearing where multiple patrol routes crossed. Fresh wolf tracks marred the snow. Perfect. Naira knelt in the snow, pulled out the sharpened stick she'd shaped for nights like this, and began carving lines into the frost-white ground. Her first warning needed to be clean and unmistakable, a rough map of the festival grounds, with danger marked in hard, sharp strokes. She outlined the main pavilion, sketched the surrounding paths, and added precise symbols where attacks would erupt. Anyone trained in real strategy would see it, instantly ambush points, kill zones. Her fingers stung with cold as she worked, each breath drifting in pale clouds above the snow. When she finished, she stepped back, studying the rough sketch. Even under the thin moonlight, the drawing was clear, deliberate, impossible to confuse. Would it be enough? Would Kaelin Frost's patrols actually find it? Would they understand? She had to trust the stories that the listening king lived up to his name, that he could hear what others never said. Naira slipped back through the woods toward Silverwood and crept into her tiny room, just as dawn bled across the sky. Her body throbbed with exhaustion, her fingertips raw, but she'd done what she could. The first warning was set. 6 more nights waited for her. Night 2, Naira left another message, 50 wolves drawn, converging on the festival fields. The number mattered. Kaelin needed to know the scale of what was coming. Night 3, she sketched Core Blade from memory. She'd only glimpsed him once, but her artist's eye captured every sharp angle, the scar on his jaw, the deadness in his stare, the twisted curl of his mouth. It was one of her most precise portraits, complete with the marks that identified him as a rogue leader. His likeness had been plastered across wanted posters in Silverwood. Kaelin's guards would know him. Night 4, she risked everything. She drew the Silverwood emblem linked directly to the rogues. Anyone finding it would know someone had revealed Draxon Vane's betrayal. But Kaelin needed the truth, and she had no other way to say it. Night 5, she etched the full moon with the exact date of the ambush. Timing was everything. The attack was planned for the height of the festival, when guards would be celebrating instead of watching. Night 6, she described their battle plan, where the rogues would strike first, how they'd divide their forces, how they'd cut off escape routes. She'd scrubbed enough floors under Draxon's planning sessions to know their strategy inside out, and she translated every piece into clear, tactical drawings. Night 7, she mapped Core Blade's escape routes, his backup positions, the fallback point he'd set. Every detail she'd caught while staying invisible in the hallways found its way into the snow. Each night she returned home frozen and trembling, wondering whether any of it mattered. Were Kaelin's wolves finding the warnings? Were they taking them seriously? Or were they brushing them off as childish marks? She had no way to know. All she could do was keep drawing, keep speaking in the only language she had. On the 8th morning, she left before dawn. She had one last message to complete, the most important of all. She needed to draw Kaelin Frost himself, surrounded by a protective barrier, and a clear command: protect him. It was reckless to go out again so soon. Her hands were cracked and bleeding from freezing nights and rough sticks. But only 2 weeks remained until the festival. Time was slipping away. She reached the clearing at that breathless moment between night and sunrise. The snow lay untouched, except for her old drawings and a scattering of patrol tracks. Naira knelt in her usual spot and began sketching. She had never seen Kaelin Frost, but every pack knew the stories. Tall, commanding, built like winter, carved him from stone. Long platinum hair worn in the old style. Eyes sharp and pale as an ice-blue storm. She drew him standing strong and unyielding. Around him she carved a perfect circle, a shield, a ward, a promise of protection. She poured everything into the lines, her fear, her hope, her silent plea. Please, understand. Please, stay alive. So lost in her work, she didn't hear the snow shift behind her, didn't sense the presence until the world went utterly still. The air too quiet, the silence too loud. Naira froze mid-stroke. Her pulse slammed in her ears. Slowly, carefully, she turned and saw them. 30 white wolves arranged in a flawless semicircle. Huge, elite. Their white and silver coats shimmered in the rising light, their bodies held in rigid formation. Not a sound came from them, not a snarl, not a shuffle. The silent guard, Kaelin Frost's legendary warriors. And at their center stood one wolf, far larger than the rest. Pure white fur and eyes the same piercing ice blue she'd just sketched in the snow. Those eyes locked onto her with a force that made her lungs forget how to work. The Alpha King, Kaelin Frost. Naira's first instinct was to bolt, but where would she go? She was surrounded, hopelessly outnumbered, and even if she ran at full speed, she'd never outrun elite wolves, certainly not the silent guard. So instead of panicking, she did the only thing that made sense to her shattered nerves. She stood, slowly. Hands lifted where they could see them. She raised her chin and met that frozen blue gaze head on, refusing to break eye contact. If this was the end, she would face it with dignity. At least she would die knowing she tried to save a king who didn't deserve betrayal. The enormous white wolf stepped forward, snow crunching under his paws. Then another step. The other warriors didn't move, but their leader kept closing in until only 10 feet separated them. And then he shifted. It was seamless as one heartbeat. A massive predator, the next a man, carved from winter itself. Tall, towering at least 6'6". Platinum hair falling past his shoulders in thick waves. Eyes sharp and blue enough to cut through a soul. Bare-chested despite the biting cold scars crossing his skin like stories, etched into flesh. He was the most arresting man Naira had ever seen, and he stared at her like she was something impossible, something rare. "You," he murmured, voice deep and rough with stunned recognition. "You're the artist." Naira couldn't answer. 17 years of silence trapped her throat. Shut, but she held his gaze and begged him with her eyes. "Yes, I'm the one. Please, trust me." Kaelin's attention shifted from her face to the drawings scattered across the snow. He studied the newest one first, the image of himself at the center of a protective circle. Then he moved on to the older warnings, still unbroken and clear in the untouched frost. The maps, the ambush routes, Coreblade's portrait, the symbols tying Silverwood to the rogues. When he looked back at her, something fierce burned behind those eyes, understanding, and a rising fury that wasn't aimed at her. "You can't speak," he said softly. "Not a question, an observation." Naira shook her head. "But you can hear me," she nodded. "These drawings. You've been coming here, night after night," he continued, his voice low, risking everything to warn me about an assassination. Another nod. Kaelin's jaw flexed, rage tightening the lines of his face. "You came out here alone, in the dark, knowing the danger." He exhaled sharply. "You're from Silverwood." It wasn't a question, but Naira nodded anyway, heart pounding. Would he turn her in? Would he think she was part of the deception? "If your alpha learns you exposed his plan," Kaelin said through clenched teeth, "he'll kill you." Naira traced a quick line across her throat with her finger. "Exactly." Then it happened. Something she'd heard, whispered about, her whole life, but had never felt herself. The air between them tightened, charged like the world was holding its breath. Everything grew sharper, the forest fading until there was only him, only those impossible blue eyes, only the feeling of being seen for the first time in 17 long years. The mate bond. She saw the moment Kaelin felt it. His eyes widened, his breath caught, and then he moved, instinct raw and unstoppable, closing the distance in 2 long strides and taking her hand. The instant their skin touched, the world detonated. The mate bond hit Naira with physical force. She gasped. It felt like warmth rushing through her veins, like safety, like home, like every empty year suddenly being filled. Every silent scream finally answered. every broken part of her knitting back together. But then something even stranger happened. Her drawings began to glow, not just glow rise. The lines lifted off the snow in shimmering arcs of silver light, forming three-dimensional shapes, translucent but solid. The map hovered above the ground, rotating slowly. Corblade's portrait looked almost real, and the protective shield she'd drawn around Kaelin's image, it materialized into a circle of silver light, solid, radiant, humming with power. Behind Kaelin, the 30 white wolves stirred uneasily, but didn't break formation. Kaelin stared at the manifestations with a mixture of awe and revelation. "Moon goddess," he whispered, "you're a soul artist." Nyra looked from the glowing shapes to Kaelin, shock stealing the breath from her lungs. She had never known, never imagined her drawings could come alive like this. She'd only been trying to draw, trying to speak the one way she knew how. "Soul artists can shape reality through their art," Kaelin Frost said quietly. "Wonder," spinning Seraph his rough voice. "It's the rarest blessing the moon gives." He shook his head, stunned. "I thought the gift was gone. The last soul artist died 2 centuries ago." He tightened his grip on her hand, and the glowing sketches pulsed brighter in a response. "Your power woke because of the mate bond," he murmured. "Because you were trying to shield me with everything in you. Your intention made the art real." Nyra's thoughts spun wildly. Mate bond. Soul artist. Everything was happening too fast, too fierce, but Kaelin's hand around hers kept her grounded, steady, warm. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She couldn't say it, couldn't voice anything, but she lifted her other hand and traced letters in the air, Nyra. Nyra Kaelin repeated, saying it like it meant something sacred. The sound of it on his tongue made her chest tighten. "I'm Kaelin," he said softly, "and you're my mate, my soul artist mate, who's been risking her life to protect mine." He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. Heat rushed through her at the touch. "I won't let anything harm you," he vowed. "You're under my guard now, mine to protect, mine to keep safe." Behind them, a large silver wolf shifted into human form. She was tall, broad-shouldered, powerful, with braided white-silver hair framing a fierce face. "Alpha," she said urgently, "we need to move. If Silverwood patrols find her." "Saravorn is right," Kaelin answered, though his eyes stayed fixed on Nyra's face. "We're taking you to my territory." His voice dropped to something almost tender. "You can't go back. It isn't safe." Nyra's eyes widened. "Leave. Just walk away." She had nothing. No belongings, no time to prepare, only her threadbare clothes and the herb pouch that masked her scent. As if he sensed every fear unraveling inside her, Kaelin said, "We'll send someone for whatever you need later. Right now, keeping you alive is all that matters." He held her gaze and asked softly but firmly, "Will you come with me? Will you trust me?" Nyra looked at him, truly looked, at the honesty in those ice-blue eyes, at the way he hovered close yet gentle, protective without being demanding, at how he held her hand like it was fragile and priceless. She thought of Silverwood, of Draxon Vane's cruelty, of years spent silent, unseen, unwanted. She thought of the glowing drawings that rose from the snow because she wanted so desperately to protect a man she hadn't even known. And she nodded. "Yes, I'll go. Yes, I trust you." The smile that broke across Kaelin's face was like dawn breaking over snow. "Sarah," he ordered, "shift. Nyra rides with you. Everyone else, Delta formation. No risks." In seconds, Nyra was lifted onto Sarah Vorn's massive wolf form. The she-wolf's fur was warm, despite the cold, her movement steady beneath Nyra's trembling legs. 30 elite wolves fanned out around them, moving in perfect unison as Kaelin led the charge. As they ran, Nyra glanced back at the clearing. Her glowing artwork was already dimming, fading back into simple lines carved into snow. But the message had been heard. The warning had reached its target. For the first time in 17 years, her voice, silent or not, had mattered. Kaelin Frost's territory, the northern White Peaks, was unlike anything she'd known. Silverwood had been all cold stone, sharp corners, oppressive silence. But Kaelin's land felt alive. Buildings of pale wood and stone curved with the snowy landscape instead of fighting it. Wolves walked with confidence, shoulders high, eyes bright. No one shrank. No one seemed invisible. Here, people mattered. Kaelin guided them straight to the great hall, a towering structure that somehow felt both majestic and welcoming. Inside, huge hearths burned bright, filling the air with the smell of warm bread and roasted meat. Nira's stomach tightened painfully. When had she last eaten properly? Marine Kaelin called. An older woman hurried out from a side corridor. Her silver hair was twisted neatly, and warm, gray eyes swept over Nira in one quick, assessing glance. Alpha Marin Eldra's brows rose as she took in Nira's thin clothes, raw fingers, and exhausted expression. "This is Nira," Kaelin said, and something in his tone made Marin's eyes widen even more. "My mate. She's a soul artist." He continued, voice low but edged with urgency. "She's been traveling in secret for a week to warn us about an assassination. She's exhausted, likely hurt, and needs care immediately." Marin didn't hesitate. She was already guiding Nira toward the fire. "Come, sweetheart," she said gently. "We'll get you warm-fed and checked over." She shot Kaelin a firm look. "Alpha, you can hover later after I make sure she won't fall over." Despite her shaking limbs and the overwhelm of this new place, Nira almost smiled at the way Marin scolded Kaelin Frost, like he was just another stubborn wolf, like he was just another wolf who needed reining in, not the legendary Alpha King. "I'll be right here," Kaelin said, catching Nira's hand gently before Marin. Eldra could lead her away. "I'm not going anywhere, but please let Marin help you." Nira nodded and allowed herself to be guided to a private room. Marin worked with practiced tenderness, checking her for injuries, wrapping her raw fingers, cocooning her in heavy furs beside a roaring fire. "Can you drink this, sweetheart?" Marine asked, offering a cup that smelled of honey and herbs. Nira accepted gratefully, sipping the warm liquid. It eased the ache in her throat, even if speaking wasn't an option, and spread heat through her shaking limbs. "The Alpha says you're mute," Marin asked gently. Nira nodded. By choice or injury, Nira hesitated, then traced the letters in the air, Trauma. Marin's expression softened immediately. "Oh, little one, I'm sorry." Then her tone shifted to something warm and hopeful. "But there are wolves here who can't speak too. We use hand signs. Would you like to learn?" Nira's eyes widened. Sign language, an actual method to communicate, not just tracing letters into the air. She nodded eagerly. "Good," Marin smiled. "We'll start soon, but first we need real food in you. You're far too thin." Over the next 3 days, Nira's entire world changed. Marin taught her the pack's sign language, a fluid, expressive system that allowed full conversations. Nira learned fast. Her artist's memory for shapes and her ability to mirror patterns made it come naturally. Within 48 hours, she could hold simple exchanges. Sarah Vorn, Kaelin's beta, took her shopping for clothes, not servant rags, but warm dresses, soft leathers, and training gear designed for pack life. "You're the Alpha's mate," Sarah said firmly when Nira tried to decline anything too fine. "You'll be Luna after the ceremony. You should look the part." The word Luna made Nira's heart race. She wasn't Luna yet, not officially. That title only came after the mating vow. Right now, she was only Kaelin's chosen mate. But the way Sarah said it, confident, certain, made warmth bloom in Nira's chest. Kaelin himself was endlessly patient. He spent hours with her, learning her signs, teaching her about the territory, including her in every discussion about Draxon Vane's impending attack. "Your drawings gave us everything we need," he said, during one strategy meeting. Present were Serah, a massive male named Ren Ironpaw, the Gamma, and several high-ranking wolves. We know the numbers, the timing, the tactics, Kalen continued. Now we must decide how to respond. We could arrest Draxon now, Ren suggested, voice low and rumbling. Charge him with treason and attempted murder. Based on what Sarah countered. Sketches in the snow that melted hours after she made them. He'll deny everything. Naira raised her hands, forming quick signs. Let it happen. Be ready. Catch them in the act. Everyone turned toward her. Kalen translated for those who didn't yet know signs. Nira suggests allowing the attack to proceed, but preparing a trap. Catch them red-handed. It's dangerous, Sarah warned, though. She was clearly considering it. If anything goes wrong, Nira signed. It won't, Kalen said before anyone else could speak. Nira signed again more firmly. You have the information. You control the ground. And you need proof everyone will see. Make it undeniable. Kalen watched her with something like pride. She's right. Draxon will claim every accusation is political. But if we capture 50 rogues and Core Blade attempting an assassination at the Peace Festival and Silverwood's involvement is obvious, no one will deny it. They planned for hours. Nira contributed, constantly sketching tactical diagrams that lifted from the page into glowing silver forms, her sole artist power, shaping them in midair. It drained her every time, but being heard, being seen, was worth every drop of strength. When the meeting finally ended and the others drifted out, Kalen stayed behind. He stepped closer, always cautiously, always giving her space, always watching her comfort level. You're incredible, he said softly. The way you see patterns, the way you read strategy. Naira, you should have been someone's top advisor. Naira signed slowly, deliberately. I was invisible. It was safer. Kalen's jaw tightened. I know. And I hate that you had to disappear just to survive. Then he touched her hand, light, careful, reverent. But you're safe now. You never have to fade into the background again. He reached out slowly, giving her every chance to step back, then gently framed her face in his hands. The mate bond thrummed between them, warm and steady and whole. I need you to understand something, Kalen said softly. I'm not claiming you because of the bond. I'm not keeping you because of your gift. I want you because you're brave, brilliant, and gentle. His thumbs brushed her cheeks. Because you risked everything to warn a stranger. Because even without a voice, you have the loudest heart I've ever known. Tears blurred Naira's vision. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever seen her like this. Her hands trembled as she signed, I can't speak. I don't know if I ever will. I don't care, Kalen said instantly. I told you, I'm the listening king. I've spent my whole life learning to hear what isn't spoken. You communicate more clearly in silence than most people do with 1,000 words. She signed, You don't mind, Naira. He pressed his forehead to hers, his voice thick with emotion. My sister was mute. She died when we were young. Rogues killed her. I couldn't save her. His breath shook as he continued. Ever since that day, I made it my purpose to listen to those who aren't heard, to defend those who can't speak for themselves. His hand slid to the back of her neck, tender and reverent. Finding you, meeting you, and realizing my mate is someone who turns silence into strategy and warning and salvation. His voice broke. It feels like the goddess giving me a second chance, a chance to protect someone precious instead of losing them. Naira's tears spilled over. She threw her arms around Kalen's neck and he wrapped her close, holding her, as if she were the anchor he'd been searching for. For a long moment they simply stood there, two lonely souls finally finding home in each other's arms. When they finally eased apart, Naira signed, I want the mating ceremony. Soon. Kalen's eyes blazed. After we deal with Draxon, he promised. Once you're safe, I'll mate you in front of the entire pack, and you'll be my Luna. Does that work for you? Naira signed back. Perfect. Then she lifted onto her toes and kissed him for the first time. The mate bond erupted between them, warm, bright, pulsing with promise. The peace festival arrived beneath a sky of clear blue and fresh white snow. Naira stood with Sarah Vaughan and the other high-ranking females dressed in a gown of silver and white that marked her openly as Kaelin's mate. Her pale hair was braided with crystals that sparkled in the sun. She did not resemble the silent servant who once scrubbed floors. She looked like someone who belonged, someone seen. Around them, the festival thrived wolves from many territories, laughing, drinking, celebrating the peace Kaelin had worked years to build. Music floated across the snowy grounds. Children darted past in bursts of joy. Draxon Vane was there too, wearing a mask of friendship as he spoke with other alphas. Nira caught him scanning the crowd more than once. Was he searching for Core Blade for the rogues? He had no idea his entire plan was about to collapse. Kaelin had positioned the silent guard in hidden points around the festival. Another 50 soldiers were stationed in the forest, ready to close in. Every exit was covered. Every strategy Core had planned was countered. It was almost poetic how completely they had turned the betrayal around. Naira sensed Kaelin before she even saw him, his emotions, his steadiness, his location. The bond kept him tethered to her always now. He approached with that effortless grace that made others step aside without thinking, sunlight catching on his platinum hair. "Ready?" he asked quietly, signing the words so only she would understand. Naira signed back, "Ready. End this." And as if the signal had been spoken aloud, the attack erupted. 50 rogues burst from the tree line in the exact formation Naira had drawn nights before. They were disciplined, aggressive, fully armed. Core Blade led them, Scar twisting his grin as he fixed on Kaelin. But he was sprinting straight into a trap crafted down to the last detail. The silent guard struck first. 30 white wolves lunged from concealment, slicing off the rogue's path before they touched the festival grounds. Within seconds, it was clear the rogues were hopelessly outmatched. The silent guard earned their title for a reason. Then the remaining 50 warriors surged in from behind, sealing every escape. The battle, if it could even be called a battle, was over within minutes. The rogues were surrounded, outnumbered, outmaneuvered, helpless. And Draxon Vane had no idea his downfall had only just begun. Core Blade himself was taken down by Kaelin Frost in 3 swift, lethal movements. Seconds later, the rogue leader lay unconscious in the snow. Not a single festival guest was harmed, and no innocent wolf was caught in the fight. Flawless execution. But the best part came next. Alpha Draxon Vane. Kaelin's voice rolled across the stunned festival grounds like thunder. He stood over Core Blade's limp form, those icy blue eyes locked on Silverwood's Alpha. "Curious," he said coldly. "These rogues attacked at the exact time and place my mate's drawings predicted." He nudged Core's body with his boot. "They followed the exact tactics she sketched. And their leader is precisely the wolf she drew." Draxon's complexion drained white. "I don't know what you're implying." "There's more," Sarah Vaughan said, stepping forward with a sealed note. "We captured this rogue 2 days ago near our borders. After encouragement, he was very cooperative." Ren Ironpaw added, "He confessed everything, your payments, your secret meetings with Core Blade, your entire conspiracy." And Sarah continued, 3 Silverwood servants confirmed overhearing your planning sessions. Maybe you weren't as careful as you thought about who was listening." Naira stepped forward then, and the entire crowd turned toward her. She was unmistakably marked as Kaelin's mate. Radiant, important, someone who mattered. Draxon Vane froze when he recognized her. The silent servant he'd ignored. The girl who scrubbed his floors. Naira raised her journal and opened it, revealing page after page of precise illustrations, maps of his scheme, timelines, strategy notes, portraits of Coreblade, every detail she captured through weeks of being unseen. My mate is a soul artist, Kalen said, his voice like steel. She witnessed every part of your plan and recorded it. She risked her life for a week to warn me. Because of her courage, your attempt to kill me and seize my lands failed utterly. He gestured and Ren brought forward chains. Draxon Vane of the Silverwood Pack, you are under arrest for conspiracy to murder, hiring rogues to attack a peace festival, and treason against the Northern Territories Alliance. Draxon's face twisted with rage as the chains tightened. That mute little servant, she ruined everything. I'll kill her. Kalen moved faster than thought. His hand snapped around Draxon's throat. His voice went deadly quiet. She's not a servant. She's my mate. She will be my Luna. And if you ever threaten her again, I'll tear you apart myself. Do you understand? Draxon choked out a strangled sound as guards dragged him away. The festival went quiet after that, less fearful, more relieved. Kalen had protected them all. The conspiracy was exposed. The rogues defeated, the peace preserved. As the sun dipped lower, Kalen found Naira at the edge of the festival grounds, staring out over the snowy landscape. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin atop her head. You saved my life, he murmured. Saved my pack. Saved the entire alliance. You're a hero, Naira. Her hands moved. I'm just someone who drew pictures. No. Kalen turned her gently to face him. You're someone who saw injustice and refused to accept it. Someone who risked everything for a stranger. Someone who turned silence into the loudest warning I've ever heard. He dropped to one knee in the snow, taking both her hands. I know we have the mate bond. I know the goddess paired us. But I want to choose you too. Naira! Will you complete the mating ceremony with me? Will you be my Luna, my partner, my equal? Will you help me build a territory where every voice, even the silent ones, matters? Tears streaked down her cheeks as she nodded. She pulled him up and kissed him, the mate bond blazing with pure joy. When they parted, she signed, I want the ceremony tomorrow. Kalen laughed, bright and unrestrained. Tomorrow, then. I'll marry you tomorrow and spend the rest of my life making sure you know how deeply you're loved. The mating ceremony took place under a full moon, with the entire pack gathered. Naira wore silver and white, her pale hair flowing down her back. Marin Eldra had woven moonflowers and crystals into the strands until she shimmered like living starlight. Kalen wore the traditional ceremonial furs, his platinum hair braided in the old way. He looked every inch the Alpha King, powerful, regal, untouchable, but the way he looked at Naira, as if she were the center of his world, made her heart soar. Marine Eldra performed the ceremony, speaking the ancient words that would bind them before the pack and the moon goddess. When it came time for the marking, Kalen cupped Naira's face tenderly. I love you, he said, voice unsteady with emotion. I love your courage, your kindness, your brilliant mind, the way you see the world and turn it into something beautiful. I love that you chose bravery when staying silent might have kept you safe. I love everything about you, Naira, and I'll spend my life making sure you never doubt it. Naira's hands lifted, signing words the entire pack had learned to understand. I love you. You heard me when no one else did. You made me visible when I'd been hidden for years. You gave me a voice louder than sound. You're my home. When Kalen Frost lowered his head and marked her throat, claiming her as his mate, and Luna beneath the moon goddess, something extraordinary erupted. Naira's soul artist gift ignited through the completed bond, and suddenly the entire clearing bloomed with radiant images. Scenes burst from her memory and came alive in silver light. Her parents smiling with pride. Her grandmother Suna, gentle and warm. The terrified little girl she once was, and the strong woman she had become. Kalen and the 30 white wolves circling her that first dawn. The glowing drawings in the snow that saved his life. Every step of her journey stood suspended in the night air like a gallery carved from moonfire. The pack stared in awe. This was soul artist magic at its peak. Truth revealed. Emotion made visible. Silence taking shape. When the images finally dimmed, Naira turned toward the crowd. Her pack now. Her home. And then something even more unbelievable happened. She opened her mouth and spoke her first word in 17 years. Mine. Her voice was cracked from years of silence, barely more than a whisper, but the entire clearing heard it. Kaelin's eyes widened, overwhelmed. Naira signed quickly to clarify. This pack, this home, this life, this love, all mine, and I am never invisible again. The pack erupted in howls, the sound rolling across the night sky. Kaelin pulled Naira close, holding her while she trembled with the enormity of what she'd done. She had spoken, not because the mate bond erased her trauma, not because she was fixed, but because she finally felt safe enough, cherished enough, loved enough to choose her voice. You never have to speak again if you don't want to, Kaelin murmured into her hair. I love you. Either way. Naira signed. I know. But maybe I will sometimes. When it matters. Everything you say matters, he insisted. Spoken, signed, drawn, or painted. Everything. 5 years later, Naira sat in her studio, a sunlit room Kaelin had built for her inside the great hall. Morning light poured through huge windows, illuminating paintings and sketches lining the walls. She was working on a portrait when 2 3-year-old voices shouted from the doorway, Mom! Mom! Watch Naira turn to see her twins racing in. Arya with Kaelin's platinum hair and frost-blue eyes. Lysa quieter with Naira's silver-white hair. Both carried pieces of charcoal. Look what I drew. Arya proudly shoved a paper toward her. A wobbly wolf obviously meant to be his father. Lysa held her drawing more timidly, a soft, perfect flower, far too detailed for her age. As Naira watched, Lysa's flower began to glow. The petals lifted from the page reel for a heartbeat before fading. Lysa was a soul artist too. Naira knelt, pulling them close, signing with one hand while speaking gently. She still used signs most of the time, saving her voice for moments that mattered. They're beautiful, both of them. When I grow up, I'm gonna be in the silent guard like Uncle Ren Arryn announced. Lysa signed shyly. I want to paint like you, Mom. You can be anything you want, Naira told them, as long as you're kind and brave. Kaelin appeared in the doorway, then their 6-month-old son, Tavian, resting asleep against his chest. Are they bothering you? Naira signed with a small smile. Never. They're perfect. She rose and moved beside her mate. Kaelin slid an arm around her waist as they watched their twins sprint off down the hallway. Through the window, the northern white peaks stretched outward, prosperous, peaceful, thriving under their joint rule. Their territory, their future, their family, all of it built from courage, love, and the power of a girl who once had no voice. And learned she could change the world without ever speaking a word. She'd done that. Her warnings had saved not just Kaelin Frost, but the entire territory. Her gifts, her art, and sharp strategic mind had shaped new policies, settled disputes, and forged alliances that held strong over the years. She'd even founded an art school for children who struggled with traditional communication. Kids who were mute-deaf or overwhelmed by spoken language learned to express themselves through color and shape, painting, sculpting, sketching. Several had manifested rare abilities once they were finally allowed to communicate in ways that felt right to them. The northern White Peaks had earned a reputation for being a place where every voice mattered, spoken, signed, drawn, or simply felt. Here differences weren't weaknesses but strengths. What's running through your mind? Kaelin asked, brushing his nose against her hair. Naira signed back. About that terrified servant girl drawing warnings in the snow. About how far she's come. She became a hero, Kaelin said. Became a Luna. became the mother of my children and the anchor of my whole territory, became the most important person in my world. Naira signed softly. She became seen. That's all she ever wanted. You're more than seen, Kaelin said firmly. You're radiant. You're powerful. You're loved by an entire pack. Naira signed one word. Yours. And then she spoke it aloud, quiet, steady. Yours. Kaelin kissed her gently. And I'm yours. Always. Years later, when young wolves came to Luna Naira feeling lost or voiceless, unable to express who they were or what they needed, she would smile and show them her earliest drawings, the ones from the week she risked everything to warn a king she had never met. I was invisible once, she would sign her voice, sometimes adding a low whisper for emphasis. I was scared and alone. I assumed my voice didn't matter because I couldn't speak, but I was wrong. She'd show them her studio filled with pieces of art that had literally shaped the territory. Paintings that diffused conflict, sketches that redesigned buildings, sculptures that inspired new laws. Communication isn't about sound, she'd tell them. It's about connection, truth, and finding a way to express what matters through words, signs, art, music, or simply presence. Your voice matters. You just need the right way to share it. The moon goddess gives us gifts, she'd say, gesturing toward the land beyond the windows. Not to make us powerful, but to help us connect, serve, and save each other. My gift let me warn a king, save lives, build a family, and find a home. But the power wasn't the gift itself, it was the courage to speak in my own way. She'd look at the young wolf with complete certainty and sign. You have something important to say. Find your way to say it. Here every voice is heard, especially the silent ones. Because sometimes the quietest voices carry the strongest truth. Sometimes a drawing in untouched snow can save an entire kingdom. Sometimes the ones no one notices turn out to be the most powerful. You just have to be brave enough to step into the light. And every time without fail, those young wolves would walk away feeling seen, valued, and hopeful. Because Luna Naira, the mute Omega, who once carved warnings in the snow and rose to become a queen, had shown them that every voice matters. Even the silent ones, especially the silent ones.